धाणम नमो आर्याणम नमो वज्रायणम नमो लोये सब साहुणम नमो अरिहंताणम नमो सिद्धाणम नमो आर्याणम नमो वज्रायणम नमो लोये सब साहुणम नमो अरिहंताणम नमो सिद्धाणम नमो आर्याणम नमो वज्रायणम नमो लोये सब साहुणम मंगलम भगवान वीरो मंगलम गौतमो गणी मंगलम कुंकुंदा सबको सादर जय जिनेन्द्र। बहुत खुशी की विषय है आज कि हम आचार्य ज्ञान सागर महाराज जी के मेमोरियल लेक्चर सीरीज में इस वर्ष का अंतिम लेक्चर, और वो भी क्लारे मैसे के द्वारा। वी वेलकम क्लारे आल्सो एंड आई रिक्वेस्ट अनवी हमारे बीच में है, उससे फॉर मंगलाचरण। उसके बाद अशोक जैन साहब से निवेदन करूंगा सादर जय जिनेन्द्र, बहुत गुरुदेव का चित्र का अनावरण करेंगे। मैं अनवी से निवेदन करता हूँ मंगलाचरण के लिए।
सभी को जय जिनेन्द्र।
जय जिनेन्द्र।
मंगलम भगवान वीरो मंगलम गौतमो गणी मंगलम कुंद कुंदातो जैन धर्मोस्तु मंगलम। निरखो अंग अंग जिन वर के जिनसे झलके शांति अपार। निरखो अंग अंग जिन वर के जिनसे झलके शांति अपार। चरण कमल जिनवर कहे भूमा सब संसार। परषण भंगुर जगत में निज आत्मता रही सार। आते पद्मासन विराज जिनवर झलके शांति अपार। निरखो अंग अंग जिनवर के जिनसे झलके शांति अपार। अंतर्मुख मुद्रा अहो न तत्व दर्शन। जिन दर्शन कर निज दर्शन पा सतगुरु वचन सुहाय। आते अंतर दृष्टि विराज जिनवर झलके शांति अपार। निरखो अंग अंग जिनवर के जिनसे झलके शांति अपार।
धन्यवाद। मैं प्रोफेसर अशोक जैन साहब से निवेदन करूंगा कि वो चित्र अनावरण करें गुरुदेव का, और उसके बाद मैं निवेदन करूंगा अनीता दीदी से, वो हमको आशीर्वचन दें। 1 मिनट का उद्बोधन अनीता दीदी का।
परम पूज्य 108 आचार्य श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की जय।
जय बोलो आचार्य ज्ञान सागर महाराज जी की जय हो, जय हो, जय हो। अनीता दीदी से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा। अनीता दीदी हमारे बीच में जुड़ी हैं।
बोलिए देवादिदेव खजर श्री आदिनाथ भगवान की जय। बोलिए संत शिरोमणि आचार्य श्री विद्यासागर जी महाराज की जय। बोलिए जन जन की आस्था के केंद्र सराकोद्धारक षष्ठ पट्टाचार्य श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की जय। पूज्य गुरुदेव के प्रति 4 पंक्तियां समर्पित हैं। वो रंग बदलकर तस्वीर बदल देते थे, कमान से निकला हुआ तीर बदल देते थे। बहुत शक्ति थी गुरुवर के चरणों में, वो इंसान की तकदीर बदल देते थे, वो इंसान की तकदीर बदल देते थे। परम पूज्य आचार्य श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज श्री का वात्सल्य भाव इतना विशाल था कि सब उनकी ओर आकर्षित हो जाया करते थे। उनके आदर्श हिमालय पर्वत से भी ऊंचे, उनके हृदय की गंभीरता सागर को भी उथला सिद्ध कर देती थी। निश्चित पूज्य गुरुदेव के अंदर पृथ्वी जैसी क्षमा, आकाश जैसे निर्मलता, चंद्रमा जैसी शीतलता और समुद्र जैसी गंभीरता थी। अनेकों प्रतिकूलताओं के मध्य रहकर सरा क्षेत्रों में जो ज्ञान की अलख जगाई है, इतिहास उसे कभी भुला नहीं पाएगा। पूज्य गुरुदेव समता, विनय, धैर्य, सहिष्णुता की साकार मूर्ति, ज्ञान समुद्र थे। आपके प्रवचनों से प्रभावित होकर कायर व्यक्ति क्रूर हो जाए, सूरवीर हो जाया करता था। निर्दयी व्यक्ति दयावान हो जाया करता था। कृपण व्यक्ति महादानी हो जाया करता था। कटुभाषी मधुर वक्ता हो जाया करता था और अकर्मण्य व्यक्ति कर्मठ बन जाया करता था। ऐसे पूज्य गुरुदेव के श्री चरणों में निश्चित जब तक घट में श्वास रहेगी तब तक हम और आप सभी उनके प्रति नतमस्तक रहेंगे, क्योंकि पूज्य गुरुदेव के जीवन की जितनी भी विशेषताएं हैं वह शब्दों के माध्यम से नहीं कही जा सकती हैं। ऐसे पूज्य गुरुदेव के श्री चरणों में हम और आप सभी नमन करते हैं और उनके प्रति श्रद्धा सुमन समर्पित करते हैं। इसी तरह की हम सभी की श्रद्धा आस्था पूज्य गुरुदेव के प्रति बनी रहे, उनके आदर्शों को हम इसी तरह से अपनाते रहें ताकि एक दिन हम भी अपने लक्ष्य को प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। बोलिए परम पूज्य आचार्य रत्न श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की जय।
बहुत धन्यवाद दीदी। गुरुदेव का आशीर्वाद ऐसा रहा हमेशा। 2015 में उन्होंने भी महाराज जी के दर्शन सोनागिरी में किए थे, और जैसा आपने बताया कि जो उनको देखता था उनका हो जाता था, और आज सौभाग्य है क्लैरे मैसे हमारे बीच में हैं और उनका लेक्चर हम सुनेंगे, और गुरु भक्त हैं वो भी। मैं निवेदन करूंगा अशोक जैन साहब से कि आज के हमारे चेयरमैन अशोक जैन साहब से निवेदन करता हूं कि वो क्लैरे को इनवाइट करें और उनके बारे में 2 शब्द बोल के उनको इनवाइट करें फॉर द लेक्चर।
परम पूज्य 108 आचार्य श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की जय। I welcome you all today in this very important, on this occasion when we are gathered here to listen a great scholar and an academician like Dr. Claire Massey. I have met her when she attended the international conference in Sonagiri ji, and I have read her articles, and I know about her that she has worked in our country in India and visited India several times because she did her work on Jainism as well as Buddhism also. So I welcome you, Dr. Mass, and I request you to kindly deliver your talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jai Janindra, thank you very much. And I am very honored to be here today and to be able to deliver my presentation in name of Acharya Gyan Sagarji. I had the pleasure of actually meeting him as well as many of you today online in Sonagiri in 2015 when I was invited to participate in the 4th International Jain Conference of the Gyan Sagar Science Foundation. It was a true pleasure to be there. I learned a lot from being able to interact with all of you, including with Acharya Gyan Sagarji. So I will share my screen so I can start the PowerPoints. So I think you should all be able to see the PowerPoints at this, and let me try to. Okay. So I think everybody can see the PowerPoints.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. So what I suggest, or what I would like to do, is I would like to start this presentation by sharing some photos that I took when I was in Sonagiri in 2015. I think many of you will recognize many people on those photos, and I would like to start with this slideshow as in respectful memory of the late Acharya Gyan Sagarji. Right, thank you. So with this, I would like to start my presentation. So the title of my presentation is Visions of the Body in Early Jain Texts. And I would like to start with this particular quote from the Bhagavati Sutra. So this is a quote about one particular ascetic called Skandaka, who is a model Jain ascetic in Jain texts. And he conducted a series of very long and prolonged fasts. And at the end of his asceticism, he has this following reflection about his body. So he says, because of my asceticism, my body is withered and wizened, fleshless, covered only with bones and skin. My bones rattle. My body is emaciated and strewn over with veins. I walk only by force of spirit. I stand only by force of spirit. Having spoken, I feel exhausted. When speaking, I feel exhausted. And when I'm about to speak, I feel exhausted too. These thoughts of the Jain ascetic Skandaka mark the start of his final ascetic practice, namely the practice of fasting to death or salekana. Considering his weak physical condition, he resolves to ritually initiate the dying process, renouncing his body by consciously giving up all food and water intake. So in my paper today, I offer a critical analysis of the story of Skandaka and other Salekana narratives in Jainism. My focus on these narratives is on the visions of the body, or better bodies, one encounters in these narratives. In early Jain texts, Salekana narratives typically present various and often lyrical visions of the body, ranging from the divine to the emaciated to the impure body. In my presentation today, I examine the Jain discourse, or better discourses, on the body. My analysis of this discourse is twofold. First, on the descriptive level, I aim to describe the different types of bodies one encounters in early Jain texts. Second, on an analytical level, I aim to address the function of these different visions of the body. I address the question, why do Jain texts give detailed descriptions of the body, whether it is the perfect pure body of Mahavira or the emaciated body of the advanced ascetic who is about to embrace the Jain fast to death, or the inherently impure body characterizing the human condition? What do these descriptions of the body do? What do these descriptions aim to effect in the Jain ascetic, or more broadly in the listener of these body narratives? My argument is that different body visions are intentionally evoked to create an aesthetic shock known as samvega in the devotee, which ideally effects an existential transformation. With regards to the practice of salekana, vivid depictions of the body's impurity are employed, I argue, to evoke a strong sense of disgust, helping the ascetic to renounce his body when fasting to death. Drawing upon the work of Thilo de Tige, who developed the concept of idiosyncratic epistemic technology, I suggest an understanding of the function of these body narratives as literary soteriological technologies of the ascetic self, a point I will talk about in detail in the second part of my presentation. So let me begin with a methodological reflection. Why focus on the body in my analysis of Salekana narratives? First of all, this focus on the body aligns with the material religion framework, which emphasizes the significance of focusing on the body. Materiality as a focal point encompasses various concepts, including the concept of bodiliness or being embodied. I subscribe to the epistemological assumption underlying the material turn in the study of religion, which posits that what human beings know of the world, they learn as they engage with their natural and cultural environments using their bodily capacities and fields of sensations. To be in the world is to be embodied. As Brent Plate, a leading scholar in material religion, explains, and I quote, "Religion must be understood as deriving from rudimentary human experiences from lived, embodied practices." Second, this methodological call to take the embodied aspect of religion seriously is supported by what we observe in Jain practice, both in historical as well as in contemporary contexts. It is striking, for instance, that when the ascetic Skandaka from our earlier Bhagavati Sutra, when he converts to Jainism, so Skandaka, before becoming a Jain, in the story we learn that he was a Vedic scholar, but after meeting Mahavira, he actually decided to become a Jain ascetic. So when he converts to Jainism, the religious instruction he receives is entirely focused on bodily comportment. Having initiated Skandaka into the community of ascetics, Mahavira instructs him as follows. O beloved of the gods, so that this is Mahavira speaking to the ascetic Skandaka, you should walk in this manner, stand in this manner, sit in this manner, lie down and turn to your side in this manner, eat in this manner, speak in this manner. This is how you should behave with care and restraint towards all living beings, souls, the animate and living substances. Concerning this, you should never be negligent. Becoming Jain occurs through the application of a set of behavioral norms, which turns everyday practices such as sleeping and eating into the religious ones. Third, the emphasis on the body is further warranted by the extensive discourse on the body found within the Jain texts themselves. The seminal work of Douglas has made it clear that human bodies are embedded in ideologies and imbued with meanings, or, as Olivelle observes, the human body, as culturally created and perceived, stands as the primary symbol of the social body, the body politic. Bodily appearance, movements, and functions, from dress, hair, food, and toilet to excrement, sexual fluids, and menstrual discharge, are given cultural and socially determined meanings, end quote. The body, in other words, is the axis around which any type of socialization occurs, whether related to gender, sexuality, social or religious identity. Therefore, analyzing the Jain discourse on the body, or better, discourses on bodies, can help us gain a better understanding of the Jain ascetic project in general and the fast to death in specific. The story of Skandaka holds different visions of the body. One of these being the divine, perfected, pure body of the Mahavira, marked by auspicious characteristics. Skandaka, when seeing Mahavira, reacts viscerally. He has a bodily response. Mahavira's extraordinary beauty affects an aesthetic experience. So, quoting from the original text, having seen Mahavira's body, Skandaka's heart and mind, instantly filled with wonder and contentment, he became exceedingly joyful, experiencing the utmost delight, feeling deeply excited and happy. End quote. Mahavira, back then, was still collecting alms at regular intervals, which, as the text suggests, explains in part his pleasing physique. Thus we read in the Bhagavati, in that period, at that time, Srimad Bhagavat Mahavira partook of food regularly. Then the body of Srimad Bhagavat Mahavira, who partook of food regularly, looked prominent, lovingly, illustrious, auspicious, fortunate, as good omen, lustrously shining, though bereft of any ornaments, adorned with auspicious signs, marks, and qualities, and shining brightly with glorious luster. The body of Mahavira receives extensive attention in early Jain texts. One of these earliest descriptions of Mahavira's body can be found in the Uvavaya Sutta. The text stresses how his body remained free from disease, looking healthy, good, white, and incomparable, and describes at length his various extraordinary features, from having a broad chin, like that of a tiger, and a pointed nose, like Garuda's beak, to having strong and well-defined abdominal muscles, like those of fish and birds, and a waist as elegant as that of the finest elephants. We further learn how his body was shining all the while, as it took no dirt, deep or light, spots, sweat, or dust. Also, his palate and the lower portion of his tongue were always free from dirt, as if just washed. And, like the body of a pedigree horse, his body remained untouched by urine and stool. His magical features also included a beard and a mustache that never grew longer, but always remained the same, and a breath like that of a lotus flower. Regarding his physique, he is described as having well-rounded cheeks, a robust chest, and a plump frame, which concealed the bones of his ribs. His body bore no fewer than 1,008 auspicious marks. While some metaphors, such as possessing abdominal muscles akin to those of birds and fish, may seem strange or unappealing to us today, this perception is in part because the poetic language employed in these descriptions is far removed from our contemporary vernaculars of beauty and divinity. I assert that the lyrical descriptions of Mahavira's body serve several purposes. One, they aim to establish his divine nature. Though born as a human, as a Tirthankara, a Jina, a Mahavira, he is anything but an ordinary mortal. Central to the belief in an embodied God is the need to differentiate the divine body from everyday mortals. Mahavira's strangely pure and perfect body effectively distinguishes him from ordinary imperfect bodies. Second, Mahavira's body symbolizes the theological argument that he embodies the three jewels, namely right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct. Within Jain theories of the body, all actions translate to visible physical features, which in turn, as signs, can be interpreted by others. Good actions result in pleasing, attractive features, while immoral ones produce unappealing traits. This view is shared with other traditions as well. For instance, in the Pali Vinaya, the monastic text of the Buddhist Theravada school, monks who behave badly become, according to a standard description, haggard, wretched, and of bad color, yellowish, and with veins showing all over the body. A healthy, beautiful body, regardless of how health and beauty are defined, mirrors one's inner qualities. Though Jain ascetics are constantly reminded to discipline the body, master the senses, overcome attachment to the body, and realize its inherent impurity, there is no contradiction in seeing those same ascetics praise the physical features of Mahavira or any accomplished ascetic. Physical beauty is viewed as a sign of morality from both past and present lives, a trope that continues often today. If Mahavira's body is divinely perfect, that is because of his divinely or enlightened state. In the words of the Uvavaya Sutta, and I quote, Mahavira had absolutely stopped the inflow of karma, was wholly free from mindness, having no earthly belonging or attachment, no greed, with a pure body, free from the bondage of karma, beyond affection, beyond attachment, beyond malice, and beyond ignorance. It is worth remembering that Skandaka had a visceral reaction upon seeing Mahavira, experiencing a profound sense of joy. Skandaka's physical response verifies to a certain degree the truth of Mahavira. Simultaneously, his reaction indicates that the sight of Mahavira impacted him so deeply that it transformed him, establishing a profound truth within him. This, I argue, is a main purpose of the lyrical descriptions of Mahavira's body, to elicit an aesthetic response in the viewer that leads to a deeper existential transformation. I will return to this point in the final section or in the second part of my presentation. Let us now consider the vision of the impure body in Jain texts. Jain texts are replete with visions of the body as vessels of impurity. But within the context of the Jain fast to death, this image is particularly prevalent. In the Samadhi Maranotsaha Dipaka, a 15th century text by Bhattaraka Sakalakirti, instructs the Jain ascetic who seeks to fast to death to think as follows. So, he should think, alas, because of the darkness of my passions, I have ignorantly, constantly, and for a long time nourished the meat of this body in vain. Alas, what is the use of constantly filling up this body with foods that will ultimately just be voided? Certainly, the body is just like a vessel full of holes. Given this fact, how are living beings not indifferent to worldly pleasures? Alas, just as hide may be ruined by being sprinkled with water, so too the body merely accumulates worms and excrement by nourishing it. And just as leather prevents that ruined condition, so too a body becomes pure through tapas or asceticism. Good men do not reach contentment through repeatedly eating. Instead, their desire for food merely grows. What, then, is the use of such sins and impurities? Formerly, I nourished this body with food according to my desires. Now, for the sake of the Atman, I face the consequences of this with the observance of true tapas. The body here is presented as inherently impure and as a source of misfortune. Being insatiable, the body is the enemy of the true ascetic who seeks to overcome passions. Nourishing the body with food is seen as futile. The correct attitude towards such a body is one of rejection. A similar negative view of the body can also be found in an inscription dating to the first half of the 15th century in Bhatkal, a coastal town in North Karnataka. The inscription celebrates the success of the local ruler named Sangabhupa and the Salekana of his teacher, a Jain ascetic. It presents the ruler as familiar with the duties of the ideal Jain ascetic and the fact that the Agama utterances admit termination of life through the Salekana path when one is faced with unsurmountable calamities, unbearable old age, and incurable diseases. But though the king is familiar with this Jain law, he expresses his reluctance, questioning, and I quote, "How am I to hold it appropriate for your holiness to take this path of Salekana?" To this, the Jain ascetic replies, "The brain, bones, blood, urine, excreta, phlegm, and pus are covered with skin. Even such a hideous body appeared perfect and beautiful to me all these days because of my blind attachment to it. Trusting this body, I have traveled so long, so far. O Sangabhupa, hugging on to the fleeting life that is as ephemeral as the rainbow and a lighted wick held against the stormy wind, should I ignore this path that assures supreme salvation?" End quote. In this inscription, the Jain ascetic puts forward a vision of the body as inherently impure and repulsive, filled with polluting substances. A previous and misplaced attachment towards his body made him experience his body as perfect and beautiful. Emphasizing the transient nature of the body, he advocates for following the path that leads to supreme salvation, namely Salekana. Now, inscriptional space is limited. It is therefore all the more interesting to note how this space is used to present a view of the body as impure, illusionary, and transient. This view of the body as impure and insatiable is not unique to Jainism, but similar views are also found in other Indian ascetic traditions. Now, analyzing such descriptions of the body in Hindu and Buddhist ascetic traditions, Olivelle talks about the rhetoric of deconstruction. In this rhetoric, the body is not imagined as a whole, which is worthy of care and adoration, but it is deconstructed into its component parts, dispelling any false notions of oneness, while at the same time stressing its innate impurity and temporality. What is deconstructed, however, is not simply the idea of the body as an organic whole, but also the dominant ideologies of the body through which an individual is perceived, related to, acted upon, and evaluated. Olivelle uses the concept of deconstruction to highlight that the ascetic creation of the body is best understood as a deconstruction of the socially created body. Much like other aspects of Indian asceticism, the ascetic creation of the body can be understood adequately only within its structural relationship to the human body and as social creation. In ancient India, the ascetic view of the body, whether Jain, Buddhist, or other, stands in dialectical relation to the ideology that presents the Brahmin body as inherently pure, but threatened at its boundaries with impurity, both through the discharge of bodily fluids and excrements, and from the contact with impure substances and individuals. In direct tension to this social construct of the body, the ascetic discourse presents the body as impure in its very essence, the source indeed of all pollution. So thus far, we have seen how the Jain view of the body as inherently impure and transient must in part be understood as a deconstruction of the social body, standing in dialectical opposition to the Brahmanical ideology that presents the twice-born body as pure but fragile as it is under constant threat of pollution. I would like to go one step further and argue that the Jain ascetic discourse not only entails a deconstruction, but also an inversion of key practices and ideas pertaining to the social body and the society it represents. In the story of Skandaka, the story I started at the beginning, the ideal Jain ascetic is imagined, known, and praised for collecting alms, eating little, roaming from place to place, having no possessions, as well as for not bathing and wearing simple white robes, or in the case of Digambaras, for going naked. The meaning and value of these practices can be assessed in both positive and negative terms. In positive terms, each practice explicitly expresses asceticism or tapas. In negative terms, the significance of each practice lies in what it does not do. For instance, the significance of collecting alms lies in the fact that the ascetic does not cook his own food. The significance of roaming from place to place lies in the fact that the ascetic does not live in a fixed abode. The significance of not bathing and wearing simple white robes or no clothes at all lies in the fact that the ascetic does not groom and dress his body according to normative social conventions. Cooking, living in a house, grooming, and dressing the body are the everyday fundamental activities and symbols of the householder's life. By renouncing these, the Jain ascetic not just rejects but reverses the value system of life in the world. In the context of the 4 stages of life, or ashramas, Olivelle similarly observes, as far as renunciation is concerned, none of these practices are significant in themselves. Their significance lies in the fact that they constitute the negation of other practices typical of life in the world. What is truly significant is not what a renouncer does, but rather what he implicitly refuses to do by the very fact of doing what he does. By renouncing the life of a householder, the Jain ascetic does not merely reject, but actively reverses the value system of life in the world. What society considers dangerous, loathsome, inappropriate, or polluting becomes the foundation upon which the ascetic constructs his valor. Conversely, what is considered honorable and desirable in societal norms is precisely what the ascetic renounces. Let me illustrate this inversion principle by means of the notion of dirt. As Mary Douglas succinctly observed regarding the notion of dirt, there is no such thing as dirt. No single item is dirty apart from a particular system of classification in which it does not fit. In ancient India, societal norms dictate that an unclean body, symbolized by dirt, should be avoided. Contrarily, the Jain ascetic embraces dirt as a symbol of detachment and a method of purification. By adhering to an ideology that challenges the normative societal value system, the Jain ascetic negotiates his valor through the deliberate accumulation of dirt. In the story of Skandaka, we can see how the Jain ascetic completes a very long series of ascetic practices during which he must refrain not only from bathing, but also from removing anything that becomes affixed to his body. The Bhagavati Aradhana, a text on which Ludgard Soni also worked on, Digambara the text prescribes that the ascetic, desirous of embarking on the path of fasting to death, must adopt the appropriate outward appearance, which includes the ascetic practice of donning dirt, maladharana. The Aradhana frames this act as the act of renouncing the body, which requires the ascetic to renounce also bathing, oil massaging, smearing his body with medicinal paste, clipping nails, cutting his hair, trimming his beard, mustache, and eyebrows, as well as refraining from using perfumes, flower garlands, etc. In other words, he is asked to forego all conventional grooming rituals. Several inscriptions from Belagola celebrate Jain ascetics with the epithet Maladhari, which literally means dirt wearer. From the 12th century onward, Maladhari also began to feature as the personal name of ascetics. One Jain guru named Maladhari Deva was honored for never scratching despite the itch caused by the dirt that covered the entire body like armor. This example of dirt, avoided by society but embraced by advanced Jain ascetics, illustrates well the inversion of societal values within Jain asceticism. Dirt, or that which is deemed impure by societal standards, becomes a very source of worth with Jain ascetics. In other words, the Jain ascetic in the ancient Jain texts constructed his valor by means of practices which upturn the normative value system of the surrounding society. If the ascetic applied himself successfully, he could, so to speak, overcome dirt through dirt. As we have seen, the purified body of Mahavira is one that took no dirt, sweat, and dust, which remained untouched by urine and stool, and whose hair never needed any trimming, as it always remained the same length. In other words, the perfected body of Mahavira is beyond the need of grooming. His body, one could argue, represents a final inversion. If the advanced ascetic body is characterized as severely emaciated through his asceticism, the body of Mahavira is one whose bones and ribs remained invisible because of his plump frame. If the advanced Jain ascetic is celebrated for being a Maladhari or dirt wearer, the body of Mahavira is beyond dirt altogether. If the advanced Jain ascetic ultimately adopted the Jain fast to death because his extreme asceticism brought him to the point that even the mere thought of speaking felt exhausting, the body of Mahavira was free from physical exhaustion altogether. If the advanced Jain ascetic works with a body that is inherently impure, Mahavira made things pure by his touch. The body of Mahavira highlights the ultimate goal, transcending the limitations and impurities of the physical body by means of ascetic practices. If the different visions of bodies represent a hierarchical classification, then the divine body of Mahavira symbolizes the ultimate state of purity and liberation. I now move to the second and final part of my presentation. So, what is the purpose of the extensive lyrical descriptions of the body in Jain text, whether it is about the divine body of Mahavira or the impure, transient body of everyday mortals? So my argument is that the lyrical descriptions of the various bodies in Jain texts function as literary religious technologies of the self. By technology of the self, I refer to the concept articulated by Thilo de Tige concerning the role of rebirth stories in Buddhist and Jain traditions. So earlier scholarship often regarded these narratives as mere stories. De Tige critiques this approach, noting that such stories have been dismissed as, I quote, folklore or literary compositions, as a popular layer of the tradition, an exclusively lay phenomenon divorced from renouncers' practices, or a late medieval development contrasted to a supposedly pure original tradition. Rather than reducing them to tools for transmitting religious doctrines or conveying performed theoretical content, de Tige views karma and rebirth narratives as idiosyncratic epistemic technologies. In his words, South Asian stories operate as an idiosyncratic epistemic technology which allows and intends an embodied interpersonal contextual learning. Rather than transmitting rational knowledge or nominal doctrines and presenting precepts to prescribe moral behavior, stories generate knowledge through experiential processes, transpiring and inspiring insights and experiences like that of Samvega. In a similar vein, and in conclusion, I propose that the lyrical descriptions of various bodies in Jain ascetic literature, whether depicting the pure and perfected body of Mahavira or the impure and loathsome body of ordinary humans, function as literary soteriological technologies of the self. These descriptions aim to evoke emotional responses that facilitate the ascetic's journey towards emancipation. The description of the loathsome body, for instance, are designed to instill profound dispassion in the listener, provoking an experiential understanding of the transient nature of human existence. This cultivated disgust fosters the necessary detachment to renounce the body in the pursuit of liberation. Conversely, descriptions of Mahavira's perfected, purified body aim to elicit an aesthetic experience, this time positive and inspiring, that motivates the ascetic to commit fully to the path of purification. In both cases, the goal is the same, to move the ascetic toward liberation. These different visions of the body are deliberately evoked to thrill, shock, or shake the devotee to a deeper existential insight, resulting in a spiritual transformation. It is useful here to introduce the concepts of Samvega and Nirvega, which are central to the storytelling traditions of Jains and Buddhists alike. Jain stories about karma and rebirth are known for trying to induce in the listener the experience of Samvega, which can be described as follows. Samvega is a religious kind of perturbation or longing for the unseen, which arises as a result of either fear, disgust, or dispassion, caused by the realization of the miseries and painfulness inherent in the samsaric condition. While the experience of samvega involves a visceral response to some pertinent experience, it also, and more importantly, involves a transformation. The experience or shock, so to say, the devotee experiences has a meaning, and it is the realization of that meaning that results in an existential insight. Something which was previously not known or understood suddenly strikes like lightning, leaving the devotee profoundly changed. In the case of the Jain stories on karma and rebirth, samvega often revolves around the realization of, I quote Detij, the unpredictability of human relationships within the endless circle of rebirth, end quote. The experience of samvega leads to nirvega, a deep sense of detachment and indifference towards the world, motivating the protagonist and listener alike to renounce the world. So my final arguments for today is that the various and often lyrical visions of the body serve a similar purpose as the karma and rebirth stories of the Jain tradition. Just as these narratives deliberately try to move, so to speak, the devotee to profound existential insight and change, so do the different visions of the body. Specifically, in the context of Salekana, provocative images of the impure body are used to instill a sense of disgust towards the body, aiding the ascetic in developing the necessary detachment to adopt the fast to death. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for so wonderful lecture and pictorials you have shown to us. I request Ashok Jain Saab to invite the questions if any, and I once again congratulate you for such a wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
Ashok Jain Saab.
Thank you very much, Dr. Claire. I am really very happy to listen you. And you have mentioned various aspects, and with a special reference to Salekna and purity of the body, purity of the soul. So now the session is open for discussion, and I request the audience, if they have any query, any suggestion, any question, then Dr. Claire is there with us, and she will satisfy your crunch. Please.
Claire, I'm very
Yes.
happy to see you after many,
Absolutely. Likewise.
even I met Jayajiran, we met so many times, and it will be nice that you can also talk so deeply about Jain philosophy, Jain religion. I've listened to your class, so I'm glad to see you and continue this work that you have been doing for many years at Tübingen and also before that at University of Texas at Austin. So along with that, it might be helpful for this audience what exactly you are doing at Tübingen these days. I know beyond the lecture, so that they know what kind of projects you are working on.
Thank you, Philippe.
Will you like to share? Would you like to share what you are doing at Tübingen?
Yes. So for all of you, I would like to share that right now I am a professor at the University of Tübingen, and I work at the Department of Indology, and I'm working on a book which actually focuses on the Jain fast to death, or on the or on Salekana. If you don't know yet, I actually published already several articles on Salekana. Some of my articles are really focused on contemporary ethical debates, and I make a comparison between the Jain fast to death with an end-of-life option known as voluntarily stopping of eating and drinking. And I really invite you to look at this article because I make an ethical argument based on different court cases to consider Salekna as different from suicide. So please, if you're interested in this topic, feel free to write an email and I will be very happy to share my publications on this topic. And of course, if any of you are in Germany and in the vicinity of Tübingen, I invite you as well to write to me, and I would be very happy to meet any of you and discuss more about Jainism together in person over a cup of chai.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Gosalia Saab.
Hi. Thank you very much for Dr. Jain. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. Dr. Claire, I'm glad to listen to your lecture. But then, you know, I was thinking it was more on the Salekna, because Salekna is being prescribed in absolute terms by Amrit Chandra Acharya Dev in Purusharth Siddhi Upay in a stanza 175 to 179. And he describes Salekna that basically you are getting purity of the soul. So body is not important. Body is simply association with the soul. And Mahavira has a perfect body because he has a fruition of the Tirthankar Nam Karma. And as a lay person, I may not have perfect body because of the name karma fruition. So it, regardless of the body, I mean, my job in this human life is to purify myself. And so whether it's a pure body, impure body, perfect body, imperfect body, it doesn't make difference. So, you know, ultimately human life is meant for self-realization and then to continue further. And the highly educated ascetics and everything, they gave up everything, complete dissociation from the worldly object. Only the thing they can't dissociate from the body because the body and soul are associated because of the age-determining karma. So whatever the things can be dissociated, the monk will dissociate. So he will be away from the society. He'll be engrossed in his eternal soul's nature and everything. So those are the things. I'm pretty sure you have worked on those Amrit Chandra Acharya's Salekna, etc. things, you know. So these are my comments. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity, Dr. Jain. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. DC Jain Saab.
All right. If I could have a small moment to respond to the comments I just received. So I just would like to thank you for your comments. And I am not sure if the name that I see on Zoom is actually your name, but I would like to invite you to email me the reflections that you just made, because that would be very helpful for my research, and especially the reference to the text that you just referred to, that would be very helpful. So I would just like to make an observation that I fully agree with you that regardless of the type of body, the actual aim of Salekna is actually to purify oneself and to liberate the pure soul or the Atman. So the whole of all of these ascetic practices, the whole of tapas actually is really focused on this process of purification. So I fully agree with you, and I thank you for those reflections.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Kirit Gosalia, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, USA. And I think we'll action the email and everything, so we can talk more about it. But what Amrit Chandra Acharya Dev in about 1,000 years back, and he wrote the commentaries on Samaysar and Pravachansar, etc. And he has amazing work. He has done it. in Samaysar to purify the soul, etc. And Purshat Siddhi Upay is his own creation. And as I said, that I'll be more than happy to share those work with you. Sallekna, he has described beautifully, very nicely, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would really appreciate this. I have put my email address in the chat box for you and for everybody else to
No
contact
problem.
us.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to discuss with you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. DC Jain Sahab.
Thank you very much for allowing me to express some of my views. Claire, I would like to tell you that I am a neurologist by profession. I am a medical doctor. And I have two aspects to discuss. First is about the Sallekna, where we have resolved that the passive euthanasia means that the terminal life support system we are dissociating in a person who is terminally ill and disease is not curable. But in Sallekna, it is almost the same pattern. In the medical terminology, I would like to express that the Sallekna is equivalent to suppressing the metabolism of body to the extent that the metabolism becomes zero. And that is achieved by the process which you have rightly advocated, like fasting and other measures. So that is the suppression of the metabolism, and metabolism, when it is suppressed, then methodologically all the karmas can be set off. So this is one aspect of the Sallekna and its usefulness. You narrated that the Lord Mahavir, he acquired a beautiful physical body. And this body was not because of the last birth which he took as a Tirthankara, but earlier he practiced the science of spirituality, which bestowed him a good body, which could tolerate the extreme adverse situations, and he could attain the final pathway of salvation. I would like to express one more aspect, that when we suppress the metabolism, like we have adopted a technique, a cryo, that is, we cool the body to the extent that it becomes almost more than 40 degree centigrade. So there, the metabolism is suppressed to the extent that it almost becomes negligible. So this is a scientific approach which has been followed and is being investigated. I would like to suppress that the Jainism has a value to achieve the terminal events to go in a peaceful manner. This is what I would like to express. The second aspect is that in the Mayo Clinic in United States, the spiritual sciences is being taught as a medical subject. We have also started a subject like Department of Spiritual Science, where we would like to incorporate that how the soul can be evolved to the extent of exhibiting externally that all life forms in the world, they should be respected. And the person who respects the life forms he attains the supreme state and he can achieve liberation. These are the two comments which I would like to express. And I thank you again, Claire. You made this subject very interesting, very lucrative, and very appealing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights on the process of Salekana and for bringing in the scientific perspective also on this fast, and for pointing out that actually through this process one brings down or nearly annihilates the metabolism of the body. This is very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to talk to you subsequently through the email, and
Yes.
I would like to have some support that how we can go ahead with our future projects. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You.
Any other question? If you have to, Dr. Claire. Dr. D.C. Jansab, I want to know from you, as you mentioned that the metabolic activity, the metabolism is very important in our body, and the metabolism is suppressed while a monk or a Shravak, they opt for Salekna. If somebody is suffering from very acute disease like cancer or any other disease, or if he or she opt for Salekna, then during that condition, what happens to his feeling or his body or his or her mental status? That I want to know if somebody is suffering from acute disease.
आपका ये प्रश्न बहुत अच्छा है और इसके बारे में मैं ये बतलाना चाहूँगा कि जो बहुत ही टर्मिनली इल पेशेंट्स होते हैं, लाइक ल्यूकीमिया हो रहा है, किसी को ब्लड कैंसर हो गया, एडवांस्ड कैंसर है, and he has a lot of pains, sufferings. There, we realize that they need to be supported by palliative therapy. They have to be given some sort of support. And that makes the life of such type of terminally ill patients little smoother. जैसे मैं एक उदाहरण के लिए बताऊंगा कि अगर मान लीजिए किसी की पेन बहुत जबरदस्त है और उसको अगर हमने कोई दवाई दी, उससे उसका पेन रिलीफ हुआ और उसकी सफरिंग कम हुई, तो वह एक तरह का पैलिएटिव थेरेपी होगी विच विल बी यूजफुल. लेकिन ये नहीं कह सकते हम कि उसका मोक्ष हो रहा है. मोक्ष का इसमें यहाँ पर हम नहीं कह सकते कि इट इज इक्विवेलेंट टू दी एडॉप्टिंग ए साइंस ऑफ लिबरेशन. ये एक वही है कि एक स्टेज है ये. अगर उसने अगली पर्याय के अंदर इसका प्रयत्न कर करके के और फिर से वो एडॉप्ट करता है इसी पाथवे को इन ए हेल्दी सिचुएशन, देन ही मे अचीव रादर देन इन द सेम स्टेज. लेकिन वो सफरिंग कम करने के लिए हमको कुछ ना पैलिएटिव थेरेपी देनी पड़ती.
थैंक यू वेरी मच. थैंक यू. सोगानी जी, डॉक्टर संजीव सोगानी जी.
जय 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 जय. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अशोक जैन साहब और सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स का.
बिफोर यू conclude, I would like to say something.
Yeah, please, please.
Yeah, as Dr. Claire, I am really grateful to you for a very nice deliberation and providing very important information on Salekna and body and the body of Lord Mahavira, etc. And we all know in our country there had been much debate on Salekna, and one day the court also had to accept that whatever the Jain monks or Jain Shravak they do, they opt for Salekna is true, it is correct. And the court also ordered in favor of this activity, this Salekna. And we know this Salekna is the highest state of life of a Jain monk or Shravak. they opted to purify their soul. And by opting Sallekna, the Chapak feels pleasure as the impurity they are eliminated. You mentioned about the body of Mahavira, and Gosalia Sahab rightly pointed out that this is due to Nam Karma. Nam Karma is very important in forming our body and also for various other things. There are 93 types of Nam Karma, like 4 gatis, like human gati or animal or deities, etc. Jati, what kind of body you get. Then Nirman Nam Karma is very important. The placement of organs at their right place, Nirman Nam Karma. Then Ang Nam Karma, your hand, your feet, your mouth, your head, etc. So all these things, they are very important. So in Jain scriptures, it has been mentioned that whatever you are is all due to the Nam Karma. Even if we take birth in as a plant, then it is also due to Nam Karma. Or even if a soul takes birth as a Nagot, Sadharan or Pratyek Shariri, then also it is a resultant of Nam Karma. So Nam Karma is very important. And you have rightly mentioned, and very interesting, that literally and soteriological technologies of self, that is very, very important. And these descriptions, they aim to evoke several things. You also mentioned about the Sambeg and Nirbeg, because until and unless we do not have the purity of mind, peace of mind, good thinking, good thought, our emotions, etc., we cannot give for a right Sallekna. That is also very, very important. So one more thing I would like to tell you, and you started your lecture with that how to stand, how to sit, how to sleep. Yes, it has been mentioned in Acharang Sutra, and that sutra is in Prakrit, and it says, Kadam chare, kadam jethe, kadabhase, kadam saye, kadam bhasajya bhasajjai, evam pavam na bajjai. The disciple asks Lord Mahavira how to sit, how to sleep, how to behave, how to talk, how to eat, so that I don't get the bondage of pap karma. So for that, Lord Mahavira answered that you do it judiciously. And nowadays, when we hear and we see that lot of pollution is going on, lot of deterioration of forest and all these things is going on, our biodiversity is deteriorating, because we are not following those rules. We are not following those rules. So that is a very important sutra of Acharang. And you mentioned several other things. Yeah, I am really grateful to you. And thank you very much, Dr. Clear, for very interesting information on a very important topic. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Sovani, for inviting me to chair this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sovani ji?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will just take the names to give my thanks to all who joined. Jai Soni ji, Lutigard Soni ji, Kirit Gosalia ji, Manish Mehta ji, Dr. Sulek Chand Jain, who is our mentor also, Ashak Jain, and also Yifan Sinharaja. I called him Sinaraja actually. So thank you so much for joining. All others, DC Jain Sahab is our chairman and giving directions always. Dr. Bhandari Sahab, who has joined, and Manish Mehta ji. Thank you so much to all. I mean, it was great to have, Claire after a long time on this. And we met in 2015, and she has taken so many beautiful pictures and revived those memories wonderfully. And, this topic is very important and very important in respect to the, what we are still not got the court. We have one from lower courts and also, but still it has to be, verdict has to come, final verdicts has to come. So we will take your help somewhere, where we need some articles, definitely, if required. And as Kirit Saab and all others said that, this sharir is required, this body is required to purify the soul, and it is not purified in one birth. It takes several births, and then you have a Nam Karma or Tirthankar Prakriti Bandh, when you purify several times this body, and then you get the Nam Karma, Tirthankar Bandh, Prakriti Karma, and also. So it's very important to purify the body. And by doing the penance only, that's possible only by tap and Sanlekna is one of the part of that. If you do in the last of your when you see that body is not working for you and you have to take Sanlekna. So that's thank you so much for bringing this topic.
So Ganiji, before you conclude, I requested Narendra Bhandari ji also to express his views for today's talk.
Yeah, please.
Bhandari ji, you please.
Yes, thank you. It is a very important topic, and there are several things which we should follow. But I'm not in a position to comment because I joined actually late. I'm in Dubai and there is some other engagement going on. But I think whatever I heard is a very important part of our lifestyle. And it will solve many of the problems, not only our personal betterment, but for the society, environment, and the earth. So I enjoyed this lecture, and I thank you very much.
अशोक जैन साहब, मैं जो आपकी regarding the legal status, I would like to tell you that the Supreme Court of India has not given the final judgment, but they have allowed that the passive euthanasia can be practiced in the situations like the Samant Bhadracharya has written, that when the disease is not curable and बुढ़ापा ऐसा आ गया है and इस प्रकार की सिचुएशन आ गई है, उस समय के लिए the passive euthanasia can be practiced, life support system can be withdrawn. लेकिन जो यूथनेजिया का अंतिम स्टेप है, वह स्टेप अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने अलाउड नहीं किया. मैं एक भक्तावली स्तोत्र का एक श्लोक आपके सामने प्रस्तुत करना चाहूंगा, where the Acharya Mantungacharya has tried to express a feeling that what is the terminal stage when the Sanlekhna is called a successful event. वह श्लोक संख्या नंबर 12, ये शांति राग रुचि भी परमाणु भी स्वम निर्मापित त्रिभुवने कललामे भूत तावन्तेव खलु ते पर्णव्या पृथिव्याम यत्ते सम्मान परमं नहि रूपमस्ति. जहाँ जो शांति के परमाणु हैं, शांति का परमाणु का मतलब जहाँ मेटाबॉलिज्म बिल्कुल सप्रेस हो गई है, बिल्कुल जीरो हो गई है, और वह परमाणु संसार में अब दुर्लभ है. ऐसी स्थिति जो है, ये सेल्वेशन की स्थिति है. इस सेल्वेशन स्थिति का अनुभूति तीर्थंकर के शरीर को देख करके हो जाती है. ये उनके पूर्व भव के कर्मों का क्षय के कारण उनको ये देह मिली, उसके कारण इतना सुंदर रूप मिला, जिसके बारे में आज के स्पीकर ने बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से प्रेजेंट किया है. हाउ द बॉडी वाज सो ब्यूटीफुल, एब्डोमिनल मसल्स में क्या क्या फीचर्स थे. I would add certain things that facial muscles, they were also very, very impressive. उनकी ब्लिंकिंग नहीं होती थी, आई की ब्लिंकिंग नहीं होती थी. जो मसल्स हैं, यहाँ के फेस के मसल्स हैं, वे भी दे केम टू स्टैंड स्टिल। ऐसा सुंदर वर्णन आज मैंने सुना तो मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगा, इनके मुख से सुनकर के बहुत अच्छा लगा कि इस प्रकार की अप्रोच, हाउ वी कैन मेक इट एंड वी कैन एक्सप्रेस दिस साइंस इन फ्रंट ऑफ द साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी आल्सो।
स्पेशल परमाणु भगवान के लिए ही होते थे, विशेष परमाणु ही इनकी शरीर को बनाते थे।
हाँ, और कहीं परमाणु है ही नहीं, वो रहे ही नहीं, जिससे वो भगवान की जी देही बन गई और उसके बाद उस संसार में परमाणु रहे नहीं। ऐसा सुंदर वर्णन जो है। इसी तरह जो श्लोक संख्या नंबर 13 है, वो भी बड़ी भगवान की सुंदरता को वक्त्रम क्वते सुर नरो रग नेत्रहारी विशेष निर्जित जगत कृतियोपमान
बिंबम कलंक मलिनम
बिंबम कलंक मलिनम कम निसा करसे यद्वासरे भवति पांडु पलाशकल। इतनी सुंदर व्याख्या गई है। मुझे ऐसा लगता था कि जैसे मार्तुकाचार्य की प्रशंसा, इतनी प्रशंसा, जितनी प्रशंसा की जाए इस स्तोत्र के लिखने में वो कम है। उन्होंने कोई ऐसा टॉपिक नहीं छोड़ा जो जिसके ऊपर उन्होंने अपनी दृष्टिकोण न डाला। ये
इसलिए भक्तांबर का प्रभाव है, इसलिए प्रभाव है भक्तांबर का।
हाँ, बिल्कुल प्रभाव है।
मुझे पता नहीं था कि द केस इज स्टिल पेंडिंग इन सुप्रीम कोर्ट, दिस आई डिडंट नो।
उन्होंने सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उस पर हमारा जो संलेखना वाला पार्ट है उसके ऊपर उन्होंने कहा कि लेट द प्रैक्टिस कंटिन्यू, वी डू नॉट वांट टू से ए वर्ड अबाउट इट।
ओके ओके, राइट।
एंड दैट वाज द
तो डॉक्टर मिस्टर सुशील जो है ना, हमारे सुप्रीम कोर्ट के लॉयर जो हैं, सुशील जैन साहब, he is working still on this to get the final verdict. So thank you so much again. I thank you, all of you, Dr. Suchita Jain, Soni Saab, both Soni, Mr. Lutigard Soni and Jai Soni ji, for joining. All other persons who are joining and chairing, Professor Ashok Jain Saab. And again, not last but not least, joining and giving your time for this wonderful lecture. Thank you so much.
Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra.